Number 10, monkey head transplant. Okay, right off the top, here we go, pun intended. The first ever successful monkey head transplant was back in the early 1970s. I imagine some of your parents may have heard about this. It's probably pretty hard to forget. Maybe ask them about it tonight while they're mid-bite at dinner. American researcher Robert White pulled off the otherwise impossible in a slow, tedious operation. White took the head of one monkey and then attached it to a headless monkey. Yeah, add a little time and energy and voila, this actually worked. Yeah, believe it or not, the monkey actually tried to bite one of the surgeons once it came to, which, I mean, totally fair. I'd be a little pissed off too if I just had a different body all of a sudden. Sadly, the monkey passed away 9 days later, which is much further than I ever thought. But the fact that this actually happened is 1, terrifying, and 2, dare I say, miraculous. This is some sci-fi stuff right here. And here you go, new head, enjoy. Number 9, monkey become human. Okay, this next test here is a little less hands-on, so if you have some food, you could probably take a bite during this one. It's safe. Back in 1931, psychologist Winthrop Kellogg, familiar name, he was curious. Yeah, he sat up one night out of the blue and thought, what would happen if a monkey was raised with humans? Yeah, would it end up like that monkey from MVP, Most Valuable Primate? Would it learn to play hockey for the local team? Or would it learn how to do kickflips with Tony Hawk? No, none of that happened. Surprise, surprise. Kellogg brought a baby female chimp named Gua into his home, and this man raised a chimp as if it were another human being alongside his own son, human son, Donald. Yeah, they played, they laughed, they did everything together, but the test ended abruptly after Kellogg's son, Donald, started to make chimp noises. Yeah, and then everyone was like, you know what? I'm good, let's cancel this. Maybe chimps can't learn how to heel flip. We're done, let's go home. So Gua was then released. There we go. No more human best friend, you know? Back to normal, dare I say, normal? Number 8, feel the music. Okay, this next one here is a little fun and we're on a part 3 and I have to talk about it. I just have to talk about it. There are many odd experiments in history where humans should have left, you know, human elements out, like music and illicit substances. I can't say what I want to say, but it's white, it's fluffy. It's a bad substance that's white and fluffy. There you go, that's all I'll say. YouTube's like, what is he saying? I can't figure it out. There you go, only you and I know. We're too smart for the algorithm. Well, back in 2011, a study was done where rats, just a bunch of rats, were all put in a room and on loop, they played a Miles Davis song. So they were all on said illicit substance, right? That stuff. And they were in a room while Miles Davis played all day long. Just smooth jazz all day. I'm not laughing because like it's funny, it's the weirdest thing. Imagine walking into this room by accident, you're like, what's going on in here? Oh my God, everyone's all hopped up. Well, before the substances were injected into the test subjects, they all seemed to have calm demeanors while Beethoven played on loop. But after injected, all the rats were neurologically triggered to that smooth jazz. Yeah, after 1 week on the sauce, the rats were all of a sudden like, you know what? Miles Davis. Kinda slaps. Been sleeping on Miles Davis this whole time. They're all like, yeah, Miles Davis, really good, so good. Horrible animal research and taxpayers' money. Yeah, we love dark history here on Most Amazing Top 10. Number 7, the first pregnancy test. If you're looking past the ancient Egyptian times and their use of barley and urine to determine if somebody is pregnant, you'll often land on this experiment from the 1930s. Now, it was developed in 1931 by Dr. Maurice Friedman at the University of Pennsylvania Medical School. Now, what would happen is doctors would inject a rabbit with urine from a woman who was suspected of being pregnant, and the rabbit's ovaries could easily tell if that was the case. Accurate test? Yeah. Historical? Of course, it changed the game. Would it also end up with the rabbits passing away? Sadly, also a third yes. It's sad, but more often than not, when humans are involved with any medical process, the test subject dies. You know, before having its head transferred to another animal or something, you're like, what the f is happening here? Number 6, small brain and big brain. This next one here, I mean, again, we're on a part 3. We're getting into some f***ed up stuff. Here we go. In the early 19th century, humans were figuring out a lot of firsts, you know, especially German researcher Karl August Weinhold. He was on the quest to prove to all that the brain and its nervous system were both attached by wires. Yeah, in order to do so, he took brains and spinal cords of deceased cats, and he filled the cavities inside with zinc and silver batteries. And like we know now, the obvious happened. The bodies began to reanimate as if they were alive again. Huh, it's like it's black magic. Or batteries, probably batteries. It's definitely the batteries. This was the first time this type of test was done, and now we use electricity and silver for other ways, of course. But thanks to this curious doctor, the early 19th century saw some early Bill Nye the Gross Science Guy stuff. Again, imagine walking into this room by accident. Like, oh, what's going on in here now? Number 5, the multi-dog. Ah, nice, I love dogs. Let's get a bunch for the price of none. Back in the 50s, when a Soviet scientist, Vladimir Demikov, created a multi-dog, Time magazine had to cover it. Of course, this is a feat in science. As cruel as it sounds, of course, the adult dog had a newborn grafted to its neck. It's impressive, but also you're like, ew, my God, Jesus. So when it grew, it could survive off the blood of the main, bigger dog. The body, for lack of a better term, gross. When observed, the puppy did have its own characteristics, which was the craziest point here. Some say it was playful with its growls, just as the other dog's characteristics would be. It's a sad 1950s Soviet animal experiment, so of course the animal didn't survive for a long time. It just, you know, all of a sudden it was on something's neck and then it was in the next life. That's horrible. Number 4, the Great Razor Auk. Once thriving in colonies off North Atlantic coast, the great auk would grow to 30 inches long and its wings would only be used to swim. They were little cute tiny boys. They were cute but quite defenseless, obviously, since they're not here anymore. Around the 1500s, European fishermen discovered this perfect area for hunting, and it just happened to be where most of these great auks were all living. Yeah, Newfoundland. Go get screeched in and then take out 1,000 auks. There we go. It was packed, so they rapidly declined. And by 1950, the last 2 known specimens were hunted by a single fisherman on LD Island. What a But now, scientists plan on using genetic information extracted from their fossils or preserved organs, you know, people how they have, you know, birds in jars and stuff like that. They plan on editing their DNA into the closest living species, which is now the razor-billed auk. So yeah, the organization Revive and Restore may bring these birds back to life. So cute flappy wings may just return. Remember that game Flappy Wings? Disappeared from the App Store so quick. Disappeared faster than number 3, the dodo bird. Dodo birds were once big and beautiful. These flightless ground nesting birds once filled islands all over the Indian Ocean. They had massive talons, they were gray and blue, they didn't have any natural predator until, you know, we came along. Sorry, we got hungry. Around 1507, the island was discovered by Portuguese sailors and the rest is history. They were the easiest bird to hunt, hence the phrase, dead as a dodo. That's where it comes from. They weren't just loved by sailors either. No, monkeys, rats, pigs, any animal that made its way to the island easily had their eggs for lunch. And reminder, they were big eggs. So it didn't take a long time for the dodo bird population to be completely wiped out. The last dodo was hunted in 1681. Again, imagine being that guy, what a dick. But could it be? Could we bring the dodo back to life with science? Yes, apparently. This could be a real thing. Scientists found an extremely well-preserved dodo skeleton back in 2007, so we may have a chance at picking some DNA apart. A research facility near Melbourne, Australia is currently trying to use pigeon genes, and we're gonna see them in the sky. I mean, I'm all for the idea of bringing back, you know, animals and stuff. Scientifically, that's a wonderful feat, but do we really think no one's gonna make dodo bird chicken wings? I'm gonna get that on Uber Eats in a year. I can just smell it. Number 2, the gastric brooding frog. Crossbreeding and gastric brooding. Nice, we're getting close to the end, it seems. I'm a big fan of frogs, and the gastric brooding frog is particularly interesting to me and also scientists due to their birthing process. If you're eating something, now would be a good time to, you know, hit that thumbs up, maybe take a break, put that food to the side for a bit. See, these frogs back, you know, and when they were alive, they would swallow their eggs and then they would hatch them later out of their mouths. Pretty horrible if you watch that in time lapse, I bet. They're fascinating creatures. And with the Lazarus Project, scientists are actually trying to bring back the Australian gastric brooding frog from extinction. So we might see this horrible act in person. You might go to catch a frog and then all of a sudden it'll be like, wah, and then a baby will come out of it and you'll be like, all right, I'm all set actually, how about that? They went extinct back in 1983, but scientists have figured out how to implant dead cells into a fresh egg from an entirely different frog species. Amphibians are declining worldwide, so if we can get these guys back out of extinction, it would be 1 point for Gryffindor. We'd be looking a lot better, that's all I'm saying. And finally, number 1, Martha. Look, I like to keep it light, so I have to end with my girl Martha. The passenger pigeon once flocked over the skies of Canada. This was the 19th century, and it looked a lot different. Billions of these bright orange birds would just paint the skies, and rumor has it, they would fly in flocks so large that it would block the sun out for a short amount of time. Wow. Hashtag flocks that block. We love it. But only a few decades passed and the passenger pigeon, they're gone. Just like that, they're no more. So what exactly happened? Well, the very last passenger pigeon, her name was Martha. She sadly passed away in the Cincinnati Zoo in 1914. So we took a look at her DNA to see if Martha held any secrets to her past and their extinction, and we found a couple. They discovered Martha had a low genetic diversity for such a growing population. Natural selection and hunting eliminated the nicest looking pigeon, arguably. The last one died in 1914, but but in 2019, paleontologists found remains of the pigeon in protected indigenous lands in the Northwest Territories. So now they blended passenger pigeon DNA with dinosaur DNA, so that's always exciting. We've seen a few movies on how that can go wrong. We're bringing back pigeons with a touch of dinosaur. I'll say it again, on one hand, I'm glad science is allowing us to, you know, try again, have another go, but look at the pigeons we have now. Those pigeons are hardcore. These things will walk onto the subway with you. Pigeons today will ask you for change. They're ruthless. They're covered in mustard. It's not the same. These graceful birds from the 1910s, I feel like we're bringing back Captain America. You know what I mean? I don't think these old school chaps will appreciate the new game of pigeons. They're a little dirty. I don't know. I don't think they're ready, and I don't think we are either.
In our number 10 spot, we have Vladimir Demikov. Vladimir is a scientist from the Soviet Union that tried to create a two-headed dog. Not making this up. Not in the regular crossbreeding way that you may assume. He literally amputated the body of one of the dogs and attached it to the other. This honestly makes me sick to talk about. The dogs only lasted 4 days before passing away, and guess what? He did it again. He did it again. The next experiment ended up with 2 dogs living for about a month. But guess what? He literally had no purpose for these experiments. Just the ego satisfaction of being able to say that he did it. Well, thankfully he didn't, because he doesn't deserve any satisfaction or praise. Just gross. In our number 9 spot, we have Paracelsus. Paracelsus is known for being a Swiss physician, scientist, and alchemist in the 1500s during the Renaissance. He didn't necessarily experiment with crossbreeding humans with animals, but he did experiment with making humans tiny and ginormous. Also, he was seemingly evil / insane, so I just wanted to put him on this list. Paracelsus was convinced he could grow giants and tiny humans by growing them from a jar of Yep. Apparently he would keep the jar in a warm place and feed the creatures blood to make them grow. I can just see him sprinkling in some blood into that jar. Apparently he was quite successful and managed to grow tiny humans, but allegedly the small creatures turned on him and ran away. Naturally. They were said to be a foot high. In our number 8 spot, we have Irving Wiseman. Irving Wiseman was working at Stanford University as a researcher when he was given permission to inject a mouse with human brain cells. They just wanted to see what would happen. They were instructed to stop the experiment once the human-like behaviors got to a specific point, like improved memory or problem solving, because then they'll have a pinky in the brain sitch, and the concept of that only sounds good in the cartoon world. I'm not ready for a mouse world takeover anytime soon. In our number 7 spot, we have Gordon Gallup and his team of scientists. Okay, so not saying Gordon Gallup is the evil scientist, but more that all of the scientists that consented to do this in the first place may have been operating from an evil frequency. Or perhaps they were just doing what they were told because it's their job, because let's be real, the real powerful people that make the decisions are the ones funding such projects as these. But since I have no idea who funded this, as that would probably take too much digging that I don't have time for, and it will probably just lead us to the US government, we're going to just call this spot Gordon Gallup and his team of scientists. Gordon Gallup was once one of the leading experts in evolutionary psychology, and he worked with a team of scientists in the 1920s on interbreeding humans with chimpanzees. He leaked to the press that they were actually successful. The experiment was conducted at the Orange Park Laboratory in Florida. Everyone proceeds to Google the financial backers there. This is where a female chimpanzee was inseminated with human. The animal not only became pregnant, but then proceeded to give birth to a living being, a human Z. But get this, they did not allow the human Z to live. After all of that, it was euthanized. What the heck, man? Potentially harmed this animal by impregnating it only to kill its baby cub. My inner future mama bear is poking through, and I don't like this. In our number 6 spot, we have another group of scientists, the Belgian scientists. It really is so hard to name just one scientist responsible because it really does take a village to raise a child, and in this case, to create a mutant cow. Yes, a team of Belgian scientists started back in the 1800s to breed native cattle with shorthorn cattle, and over time they only selected the biggest and strongest, and eventually that led them to creating the Belgian super cow. A ginormous cow that literally looks like it's on steroids, and I'm kinda afraid of it. I'm very afraid of it. It is unclear why these experiments were being done. I can only assume for more meat. So I guess we can't call these scientists evil per se without a justified reason, but hopefully they have a good one, because otherwise, leave those cows alone. In our number 5 spot, we have Juan Carlos Belmonte. Juan is a biologist at the Salk Institute in California that has been working with other scientists and researchers in China on creating a human-animal chimera. Basically, a monkey embryo will be given human cells to create this. Now, before you get upset and say, "What for?" I think this may arguably be the best reason for doing this kind of experiment. The reason this is being done is to see if animals can possess organs such as livers and kidneys that are entirely human and can be used in the future as organs for transplants. As we do have a transplant shortage around the world, coming up with a solution to this is vital. Apparently every 10 minutes a new person is added to the waiting list for an organ transplant. So at this point it is unclear as to whether the experiment has been completely successful, but I'm sure we'll know in the upcoming years. In our number 4 spot, we have Dr. Karl Klauberg. This guy is truly very evil. He was a doctor that would work in the infamous monstrous camps that I cannot name due to YouTube violation reasons, so please catch my drift. The monstrous camps during World War II, specifically the Poland camp. Apparently originally he was interested in sterilizing all of the women of the camp, and eventually his interests expanded. He was allowed to experiment on thousands, but only 700 survived. He also artificially inseminated prisoners through a variety of methods and tormented his victims by claiming to have injected animal sperm into their womb to create a monster. There are no reports that confirm this to be 100% true, as well as there are no reports of the after effects of this, so we have to conclude that this horrible, unconsented experiment was thankfully a failure. Just pure evil. In our number 3 spot, we have Hiromitsu Nagauchi. Hiromitsu is a scientist from Japan that is leading a team at the University of Tokyo. He and his team plans to grow human cells in mice and rat embryos and then transport them into surrogate animals, similar to work being done at Stanford University in the US. The goal is yet again to continue to see if animals can produce human organs that can later be transplants for humans. Up until recently, Japan was very strict as to how long the human cells in the embryos were allowed to be kept alive till, but recently the laws changed and they're allowed to be kept until the animal is brought to term. Whoa. This will help so much in terms of what they will be able to find through studying this process, but of course there are many ethical concerns around this experiment, such as once this new animal is brought to term, then won't it be a baby? Some claim that this is pure evil to then destroy this baby after, but gosh, I wonder if the decision maker of these experiments struggle with this, because I definitely would. In our number 2 spot, we have an unknown evil scientist that created the human sheep. In 2017, villagers of a small town in South Africa were frightened when a local sheep gave birth to a human sheep crossbreed. This is truly terrifying stuff that will haunt your dreams. Like, terrifying. It will definitely haunt mine. Imagine human sheep wandering the world. No thanks. Clearly this experiment was done by some evil scientist that decided, heck, I'm going to just let this happen and see how it unfolds. No one knows exactly how it was done, but most think the sheep was just artificially inseminated. The baby born was a stillborn, but if it had made it out alive, I bet you the world would have been on the hunt for the person responsible. In our number 1 spot, we have Ilya Ivanovich Ivanov. known from his title The Red Frankenstein, who was said to have been the creator of artificial insemination. His interest eventually turned into being interested in crossbreeding. In the 1920s, he traveled to Africa. After already successfully crossbreeding a zebra and a donkey, he now wanted to crossbreed a human and an ape. Apparently, after a while of living in Africa, he became desperate as his funds became increasingly low, that he then began to inseminate African women with chimpanzees without their knowledge. Holy, that's disgusting. Eventually, when people found out about what he was doing, he was shut down and his name was forever tarnished, and yeah, I'm glad, because that's horrible.
Starting our list off at number 10, Ilya Ivanov. Beginning in the late 1800s, here we go. Soviet biologists, they actually got permission from the country to breed hybrid ape humans. What did you get up to last summer? I'll never tell. She grafted an ovary into a chimp, and the goal was to fertilize Nora, the chimp, with human DNA. So they inseminated a group of chimps. None of them got pregnant, so instead they tried to flip the project up. Now this time, they had a human inseminated with the DNA of chimps. Yeah, the other way around. The volunteer number was low, obviously. Now before anything actually happened, this would have been an absolute train wreck. Before the project was underway, he was sent away to Kazakhstan. So we didn't get any more science projects after that point, thankfully. Yeah, let's just leave monkeys alone. Number 9, human-monkey hybrid. Guys, I wish this was fake, but it's not. So scientists, they're currently trying to make human-monkey hybrids, like the title just said. They have high hopes that these experiments will succeed because monkeys and humans are similar genetically, so obviously we're gonna try a few times. Spanish biologist Juan Carlos Esbisula Belmonte is working with monkey researchers in China right now to perform these experiments. So basically they're mixing human cells into monkey embryos and then they're just gonna see what happens, I guess. I don't know. Hope it goes well. Their objective is to grow a monkey whose organs are completely made of human cells. Doesn't that sound just terrifying when I say it out loud like that? Then they would use said animals and their organs for people that need them. Yeah, of course this is a little bit controversial in a few ways, so let's just keep moving on. Number 8, Jose Delgado. Okay, we're talking about mind control, so I'll give you a moment to put on your tinfoil hats. You might need those for this one. In the early 1900s, Jose Delgado graduated from the University of Madrid. Even lands a professorship at Yale University, but his mind, the whole time, his mind was focused on others. He had other ideas going on. He was committed to mind control, and his go-to method was implants. Yeah, electrode implants, first used with, you guessed it, primates. Yeah, 3 for 3. Weird. He would use a remote control to make them do certain moves, even, moving on to mind controlling a bull. So he was kind of changing the animal game up as he went. He liked to improvise. He got in the ring with said mind controlled bull, but then oddly enough, the bull was calm. It didn't attack. That's weird. Almost like there's an implant in his brain and he doesn't want to do anything. Reports say he stopped the bull last second before it charged. I call bull. I say there's a thing in his head and he wasn't sure what was up the entire time, little poor lad. And then next in the project line came the people. 25 people were tested on with said mind control device. Yeah, by electronically controlling the brain. He believes armies could be controlled down the road, and until his death in 2011, he was upset that he wasn't cited as often in terms of mind control project in recent studies. Yeah, weird. Guy who mind controlled animals in the 1900s. We're trying not to do that maybe. I don't know. That's why we're not talking about you. Number 7, see-through frogs. Here we go. Just when you thought frogs were already hard to spot, boom, now they're invisible. Good luck catching them. Back in 2016, through artificial insemination, scientists successfully took the DNA of 2 kinds of recessive color frogs, black-eyed frogs and gray-eyed frogs. Then they combined them together to create a frog whose skin is now always translucent. They made an X-Men of a frog. We love it. The see-through factor allows observation of organ growth or cancer formation. That's the human science thing. And it kind of helps when you can see the problem, I guess. No dissection needed for further study. Right? Just looking through you. That's pretty intrusive. I don't know. Imagine being see-through all the time. Like, hey pal, my eyes are up here. Quit staring at my pancreas. Number 6, Tigons. Let Tigons be bygones. Let's never do this ever, please. I was gonna say liger, but that's been used before. We all know what that one looks like. Tigons were a real hybrid animal that you could see for yourself at both the London Zoo and the Manchester Zoo at one point in history. This was of course back in the late 30s, where folks didn't bat an eye towards these kind of projects or these kind of things. Yeah, step on up and see the Tigon. A tiger head and a lion body, and a tiger tail, all together to make a big old pile of holy. Yeah, that's what happens when you put animals in the same cage. Sometimes they get along a little too well. Tigon hybrids were seen long before the 90s as well. In 1837, for example, Queen Victoria was gifted a Tigon. That's odd. They're like flowers or a hybrid creature. What do we give the Queen? Number 5. DIY. Not sure how many times I have to say this in life, but don't try any crossbreeding at home, or ever, for that matter. Thanks. Keep it up. Because things obviously go south. For example, back in 2010, a woman named Julie Leroy, she was working as an animal control officer when an owner of a pit bull puppy said she didn't want to keep her. Okay, this happens often. But when Julie saw the dog, she was in complete disbelief. She was like, yeah, I'll take this living animal. I'm not a monster. I can commit to this for sure. Thanks. People who abandon animals also, you're the devil. Don't do that. This dog, it was a hybrid animal. It wasn't healthy, but all the more reasons why you should stick around. The dog had a squished up body, a huge jaw, and a bad underbite, and it was oddly shaped. But you gotta love him still. Look, he's so cute. God, I want him. Little bread dude. That's because the dog suffered from short spine syndrome. That's because they got the dog from a backyard breeding place who was carelessly breeding a bunch of these dogs together. Just no effort at all. No care. Thankfully, Julie did bring the dog home and gave her a loving time. Sweet little thing. Olivia and I want a dog so badly. I would definitely take this little hybrid lady in a heartbeat, for sure. A little bread bed for her. Oh, I love dogs, even if they're, you know, hybrid and created in a backyard. Number 4, glowfish. I never had a fish tank growing up. I don't know, not sure how I felt about a starfish just watching me sleep for hours on end. Back in 2012, Yorktown Technologies created hybrid glowfish. They were first created from zebrafish, but now there's a whole plethora of glowfish that you can purchase. Tiger barbs, rainbow sharks, you name it, everything's glowy now. I guess to hype up Avatar 2, I don't know. I don't see why we needed hybrid glowfish. Why are we doing this? Can we stop? Bioluminescence is natural. We see octopus or deep sea fish that have it naturally. Scientists in Singapore were originally aiming to modify fish to spot toxins in polluted water in an easier way. Cool. But on one hand, you're like, oh, these fish are pretty beautiful. They're glowy. Can I have one, please? Alan Blake, co-founder of said Yorktown Technologies, wanted them to glow only when near toxins. Now, this was back in 2003 when they first started. Guy wanted real-life notifications in the water. Cool. Today, we're at a point where glowfish are just being sold to houses for reasons. Just because. Do you want a glowfish? I don't know. Am I the only one that's like out of the loop with like the glowy fish vibe? Comment down below if a glowfish is something you want or now want. Oops, sorry. Number 3, Savannah cats. This one's been talked about for a while now. How do we feel about Savannah cats? I want to hear about this one as well. In May 2012, the International Cat Association registered this Savannah cat as a new breed. It's official, we got a new cat. Just what the world needs. More cats. I'm allergic, so, you know, pardon my beef. The international cat community confirms it. Now, it all started in the late 80s when Judy Frank crossbred a male several with a domestic Siamese. The offspring, in turn, was appropriately named Savannah. Yeah, now we have cats with big ass ears, and they're so cute. I can't help it, they are so cute. Domestic cats mixed with wild African cats. I mean, it sounds like you're gonna get a cat. I don't know how to tell you. This is like a science experiment that they're like, oh, it worked. And apparently they're great. Apparently they're not too crazy temper-wise, but they're fun and they're energetic. Great for families. Who knew? Better than glowfish. Any day. Any day. Number 2, pig human. Scientists at the Salk Institute for Biological Scientists, what a mouthful that was, have created a human-pig hybrid. Yeah, in 2017, when worlds collide, let's do it. An embryo was placed in an adult pig for 4 weeks, and then when it was taken out and further analyzed, the embryos, not only one survived, but they also contained some human cells. So their hope now was to grow human organs inside of pigs, instead of, you know, waiting for a donor. Impatient, but okay, we're listening. In 1910, zoologists figured out that it might even be possible to create hybrids between humans and their closest relatives as well. Yeah, no matter how this ends, either Planet of the Apes or Planet of the Pigs, I did my part, okay? I recycled. I didn't f with animal DNA, like Jurassic Park. I just kinda got a job. I don't know. Hands are clean. And finally, number 1, Stubbins Firth. We saved Firth for first. Let's do it. This is one of the craziest science projects I've ever heard of, so buckle up. Stubbins Firth, a researcher from Pennsylvania back in the late 1700s. First of all, as you could probably guess, methods back in the 1700s were often messy and pretty much illegal in every way. Firth was a doctor in training at the time, and he decided to prove to the world that yellow fever was not contagious. Yeah, imagine if you had Twitter. Firth would surgically insert vomit from his patients with yellow fever. He would insert vomit into his body. He would insert all their yuck into his wounds, all over his face, his eyes, you name it. He was trying to get it. He was going the extra, I'm gonna throw up. He was going the extra mile, all in the name of medical research. Even urine and saliva too. Anything yucky, he was rubbing it in. Firth, to all of our surprise, did not get sick. He was proud of that one. He told everybody the news loudly. He mansplained it at like 4 a.m. We look back now though and we realize birth just sampled late stage patients, so they were further along. Much further, say, than the contagious period. So basically he volunteered to dump all the on his yeah, science. History is gross. Science as well. Gets a little messy sometimes.
Starting us off at number 10, we have Giovanni Aldini. Aldini is one of the many scientists who is actually the inspiration for the infamous Mary Shelley novel, Frankenstein. Aldini was a 19th century physicist obsessed with the effects of electrocution. Who isn't, am I right? Anyway, he was a bit of a celebrity and he was known to travel throughout Europe demonstrating the powers of electricity. What makes this guy evil though? Well, he was one of the first scientists to use electrical shocks on mental patients. He also enjoyed electrocuting corpses. One of his most famous acts involved him displaying a body of a hanged criminal and then shocking the body to then make the muscles contract and spasm as if the deceased was still alive. I get it. Electricity is cool, but how about a little respect for the dead? Aldini was also highly respected at the time. The Emperor of Austria even made him a Knight of the Iron Crown. Ooh, sounds evil, doesn't it? At number 9, we have Hwang Woo-suk. Hwang is famously known for his work creating human stem cell lines using cloned embryos from patients suffering from spinal cord injury. This major accomplishment promised an endless supply of stem cells genetically matched to patients, but it turned out to be all lies. Hwang admitted in 2006 that he was indeed falsifying data, but still claiming that he had the ability to do what he was lying about all along. The court found Hwang guilty of buying human eggs in violation of the country's bioethics laws and embezzling 830 million won, which is equivalent to $700,000 of government money. He was sentenced to 2 years in a Korean prison. He received such a light sentence because the judge admired Hwang's dedication to Korean biotechnology. Many other Korean scientists in the community are not ready to welcome him back though, after embezzling so much money on what is supposed to be a great and worthy cause. One Korean researcher states that it is truly tragic because he is clearly one talented experimentalist. Yeah, that's a lot of money. Pretty hard to just trust someone with government and public money after a stunt like that, but hey, I hope there's some scientific breakthrough soon. At number 8, we have Jose Delgado. Back in the 1960s at Yale University, Professor Jose Delgado was working on some pretty scary stuff. Delgado invented one of the first ever brain chips. He was known to use these chips in bulls, monkeys, and humans. It is reported that he once stopped a charging bull in its tracks after pressing a button that activated the small chip inside the animal's head. With the touch of a button, these radio waves could make these animals snarl, growl, smile, invoke lust, hunger, and many more responses. Delgado recently described himself as a libertarian and pacifist whose goal as a scientist was to liberate us from our biology and especially mental illnesses and aggression. I don't know about that. It sounds a lot more to me like he was trying to take over the world with some pretty crazy mind control chips, but he was also known to test on mental patients. Whether this one is with good intentions or not, this one freaks the hell out of me. At number 7, we have Albert Bandura. Bandura is a famous psychologist who, interestingly enough, just passed away days ago in California. He is famous for being one of the first scientists to discover that learning occurs both through beliefs and through social modeling, which then led to the social cognitive theory. One of his most famous experiments he ever conducted was back in 1961 and was titled the Bobo doll experiment. In this experiment, Bandura hired researchers to physically and verbally abuse a clown-faced inflatable toy in front of many preschool-aged children. Which, when the adult researchers left and the children were left alone with the already beat-up doll, the children took on the attitudes of the adults and began yelling and beating up the doll as well. This was later to prove the theory that children were indeed influenced by the violence in media and helped prove his later social cognitive theory. The theory that a person's environment, cognition, and behavior all interact to determine how that person functions, as opposed to one of those factors playing a dominant role. Teaching kids to be future bullies in the schoolyard? Pure monkey see evil, pure monkey do evil. At number 6, we have Craney Landis. Landis was a graduate student at Minnesota University back in 1924. He asked his other graduate students to assist him in conducting an experiment in understanding if we humans all react similarly in different emotions. So, he painted specific lines on each individual's face and then got them to react to certain stimuli. At first, the experiment was harmless. He would record each of their faces as they listened to music, smell ammonia, read passages from the Bible, tell a lie, little things like that. But seeing no real results, he decided to up the ante. He then showed them pornographic images, then some horrendous photos of skin conditions, firing random gunshots to frighten his test subjects, getting them to stick their hand in a pail of slimy live frogs that had a live wire in the bottom, so when they touched the live wire they would get an electric shock. Finally, the worst one of them all, decapitating a rat. He finally put a live rat in one hand and a knife in the other hand, and the test subject was then demanded to cut off the animal's head. If they refused, then he would do it in front of them. Sounds pretty scarring, if I do say so myself. Some started crying, others laughed in disbelief, and others got angry and swore at him. 2/3 ended up carrying out the dark death sentence, and the worst part of it all was that Landis even used a 13-year-old boy, who was actually a patient at the university. His findings in the end proved nothing and were quite different patient to patient. In the end, he just seemed like an evil madman scientist. Coming in at our halfway point at number 5, we have Johann Conrad Dippel. This scientist was born in Castle Frankenstein back in 1673, so it is only fitting that he was a mad and evil scientist. Dippel was a theologian, alchemist, and scientist who developed a popular dye called Prussian blue, and it's actually still used to this very day, which is very cool, but he is also known for the most controversial of things, such as mixing animal bones and hides together in a stew he named Dippel's oil. Real original. He claimed that whoever drank this gross oil would then have an extended life, but he never said how long either, so I mean, whatever, dude. He loved dissecting animal bodies, and many believed he frequently dug up and stole human bodies and conducted weird experiments on them in his laboratory. Needless to say, this guy is one of the main inspirations for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But to the best of our knowledge, he never had the same luck as Dr. Frankenstein in the book. I'm guessing he tried to give that magical animal elixir to the corpses to see if he could bring them back to life, but sorry pal, no liquid on earth can do that. And oh, by the way, Miss Johnson would like her husband back and her cat. At number 4, we have Duncan McDougall. McDougall was born in 1866 in Glasgow, Scotland, and later moved to Haverhill, Massachusetts. One of his most famous experiments he conducted was the 21 grams experiment, where he placed a dying patient on a cot that was on a scale and weighed the patient before and after the moment of death. His findings? That immediately after death, the deceased weighed 21 grams less, meaning that the soul was indeed a physical part to a human's body and that it did indeed leave once a person passed away. The work was absolutely destroyed in the scientific community, but defended in the religious community, as they deemed this was proof of a soul in a person's body. But what makes this guy evil? Well, he conducted the exact same experiment with dogs and noticed no weight change at all. He then made the statement that dogs don't have souls. Dogs don't have souls? You don't have a soul, you jerk! You say one more wrong thing about me, mutt, and I'll shove your pipes right up your kilt. Starting us off in our top 3, at number 3, we have Louis Jolyon West. For anyone out there that loves animals just as much as they love their fellow humans, this one is a scary one for you. West was quite the controversial scientist and researcher with ties to the top secret CIA project called Project MKUltra. It was a project that used many US citizens, some of them even unwittingly, to use LSD and other drugs to see if these substances would have any mind control effects. West's studies are also believed to have major repercussions, such as a murder of a young victim, as well as the death of a full-grown elephant. The reason he felt the need to experiment on elephants, though, West knew that male elephants experienced fits, so he believed that he could induce an elephant rage with LSD. He gave the giant creature enough LSD to dose 3,000 people, and tragically, the elephant died. It was then that West concluded that elephants were sensitive to LSD. Yeah, do you think? For many reasons, this guy seems like an evil scientist. From human and animals' deaths related to the overdose of LSD, I think it's safe to say that we don't want to get anywhere near this guy. At number 2, we have Sidney Gottlieb. Sidney Gottlieb was the one who headed Project MKUltra and worked closely with West in our number 3 spot. Gottlieb was tasked with testing LSD in interrogation settings, but he didn't just test his work in interrogation settings or even in a lab. He actually brought his studies to the bar, where he would slip LSD into unsuspecting bar patrons' drinks. I don't think we need to question how unethical or wrong this one is, as it is clearly something that is messed up and sometimes still happens today, unfortunately. But this video is titled Evil Scientists in History Who Went Mad, and I think this is a pretty good proof that this guy was off his freaking rocker. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot is most definitely the most evil scientist of them all. This is Josef Mengele. Josef was one of the most famous scientists at the most horrific concentration camp of World War II. A member of the Third Reich, Josef was a camp doctor. He was known to be one of the doctors to select the poor people who were to be sent to the gas chambers, and even went as far as volunteering for more and more shifts when he could. He also conducted many torturous and inhumane experiments on prisoners of all ages. After the war, Josef escaped to Argentina and was never captured by the authorities. He did, however, drown in 1979 in Brazil. While many on this list were half-jokingly evil and gone mad, I think anyone who takes pleasure in sending large numbers of people to their doom is most definitely evil, and I think mad just goes hand in hand with this one.